And so mindfulness is the active practice of monitoring the mind throughout the day while being engaged fully with your full awareness in any task that you're doing. Not up in your head thinking, but engaged in the task. Welcome to the Meditation and Mindfulness Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Zaremba, and I am super excited to kick this thing off. I am a student of meditation. I've been meditating for about 30 years, and I first got interested in meditation when I was 15. And I was a big fan of kung fu movies. So I'd watch kung fu movies as a kid. This is in the late 80s. And I would see the master and training the student. And I knew that there was something there that was just missing from my life. I was a former athlete, used to run track, cross country, used to play soccer as a kid. But there was some discipline missing that I was thirsting for. So I went about a search, and I knew that I needed to find a teacher. And I was lucky enough to find a kung fu teacher in my neighborhood. And when I joined the kung fu school, my teacher was someone who was very well versed in meditation. And one of the first things I learned was how to breathe properly and do a breathing meditation, as well as some Qigong exercises. Qigong is a branch of Chinese health and martial arts that uses breath and energy, circulating energy throughout the body. Of course, you may have heard this energy is called Qi. And it's circulated throughout the body with various exercises, with breathing and concentration and cultivation of energy and all sorts of health and also martial arts purposes for Qigong. So I was hooked. Suffice it to say, this is exactly what I was looking for. I found my teacher, I started my Kung Fu journey, and we would begin the practice of meditation before every class. And early on, I could sense that in order to fully become a master, you had to master both the mind and the body. So incorporating the meditation into my martial arts training was a no-brainer. And after a few years of training in Kung Fu, I grew up and, like a lot of Western youth, experimented with some psychedelics around age 18. And that opened me up to multi-dimensional experiences that also brought back past life memories and latent insight, realizations. And shortly thereafter, I discovered a book in my high school. This is when I was about 18. I discovered a book in my high school library that was on Buddhism. And I was kind of familiar with some forms of Taoism through the martial arts and the energy cultivation, but Buddhism was something I was familiar with but wasn't versed in and didn't know much about. Well, I began reading the book because the cover art just attracted me. It was beautiful. It was one of those Tibetan tankas. It might have even been one of the ones where you have the tantric couple on the front. The male and the female energies. And so I picked the book up and started reading about meditation and some of the experiences that you could have in meditation. And I was basically reading something that I had already experienced on some of these psychedelic experimentation that I had. It was describing the high states of consciousness that I had already experienced but hadn't read about before. And it was describing a state called samadhi. And samadhi was described as a state of cosmic consciousness where the energy of the separate individual is joined or united with the cosmic or divine energy. And that this was the true meaning of yoga and the true fulfillment of our life's path. And so I was like, yes, I know exactly what that is. And that's exactly what I had experienced in a glimpse. And so it kind of propelled me into another interesting encounter shortly thereafter with an enlightened teacher. And my my first experience, encounter with my enlightened teacher, didn't happen too long after. What a coincidence! Where I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Rama, Dr. Frederick Lenz, and I was told he was enlightened. I knew a little bit about enlightenment at the time. Again, I was about 18 years old. I'd read a little bit about Buddhism and meditation. Of course, I understood, the concept of a master, because that was through martial arts. The path that I had set out on was self-mastery. So I was eager to meet this gentleman, and when I finally met him, make a long story short, it was an instant familiarity I had with his sense of humor, his wit, and of course what he had to say about self-discovery in Buddhism. And it wasn't long thereafter that I was on a serious meditation journey, studying with a teacher. I studied with him for about 3 years. And that's when I began to seriously meditate, when I was 18. And that was when I learned a specific type of meditation, which I also teach and share with individuals who are interested. So, I've been on the meditation journey ever since, and I'm here today because I feel that the two most important factors for self-discovery are meditation and mindfulness. And the way that I describe those concepts and those terms is meditation is the seated practice of stilling the mind, through whatever means necessary. So there's many different techniques, many different practices, forms of meditation. I like a few of them and practice a few of them on a regular basis. And then you have the practice of mindfulness, which in my definition, mindfulness is not just being in the moment, but being completely present and in every activity that you're doing outside of your meditation practice. So every action, every waking moment where you're not practicing your stillness, seated meditation is an opportunity to practice your mindfulness. And mindfulness is something where, being in the martial arts now for 30 years, it's the first thing that we have to learn in martial arts is how to be grounded and present in your body. And through every motion and movement, mindfulness needs to be exercised. So it was early on that I began the journey of practicing mindfulness through forms, through exercises in Kung Fu, and of course through the meditation efforts. So for me, meditation and mindfulness go hand in hand. Your seated meditation practice every day, ideally, you'd sit, meditate, still the mind for whatever length of practice your daily practice is at, whether you're a beginner and just starting out and maybe just, trying to sit there for 10 minutes and you can't get your mind to quiet down, or maybe you're an advanced meditator who has no problem sitting for 30, 40, 50 minutes and can quiet the mind. So wherever you're at, when you combine both meditation and mindfulness practice, you get the best of both worlds. Because the mindfulness practice will also, in turn, help your meditation practice. When you're practicing mindfulness all day, especially after your morning meditation, I like to put meditation in the morning routine. I find that when I meditate in the morning, it sets me up for a better day. And it's easier to incorporate into that morning routine a 10, 20, 30-minute meditation, whatever you have time for, and make that part of your morning routine. That seems to be the most logical and sensible way to start the day. I like to get up and have a little bite to eat, have a little cup of coffee, shower, and then sit down to meditate. And so it's good to be plenty awake when you meditate. Then when you get out of your meditation session, you're in a higher state of awareness. Your mind has become calm. Your awareness has become clear. Your focus has become sharp. And to maintain that higher state of awareness throughout the day, that's our mindfulness practice. To not get caught up in the myriad of distractions that can knock us off of our balance. To not allow the world to come in and negatively impact our minds. To remain focused and happy throughout the day. And that takes a certain amount of diligence. It takes a certain amount of awareness. And so mindfulness is the active practice of monitoring the mind throughout the day while being engaged fully with your full awareness in any task that you're doing. Not up in your head thinking, but engaged in the task. Engaged in the task to the point where you're at play, you're enjoying what you're doing. Whatever task it might be, work, school, play, driving down the road, eating your lunch or dinner. You can exercise mindfulness in so many different ways. And then when your mindfulness has become part of your lifestyle, when it's become part of your habit that you live with every single day in a mindful state, the meditation becomes much easier to just sit down and still the mind, to still the thoughts, and to get into that meditative state. So when I talk about meditation and mindfulness, they are the two practices that I feel are fundamental on the path of self-discovery. And if you're attracted to the subject of meditation and mindfulness, chances are you're on the path of self-discovery. So, why do we meditate? What's the point? I know for me, it was just something I was drawn to, like I said, at a young age. And, it's funny, another memory I have when I was about 15 and I went to my first Kung Fu tournament. It was a martial arts tournament competition. And I remember seeing a book on meditation, and they would sell merchandise at these things and all sorts of stuff and weapons and knives, but I was attracted to this book. It was I still remember, it was called The Tao of Meditation by Zhou Songhua, and it was a Taoist form of meditation practice, which is an extremely interesting practice. In Taoism, they're big on building the chi body, developing the energy body. In terms of a little bit about our anatomy, we are multidimensional beings. We have a physical body, we have an energy or emotional body, which is subtle physical or non-physical. Then we have a mental body, we have a multidimensional makeup. And without going further up the dimensional spectrum and getting into all sorts of classifications and descriptions of higher subtle dimensions, personally, I like to just focus on the three that seem to impact us the most: our physical, our energetic or emotional, and our mental. And in meditation, I think it's important to address those three aspects. So, getting back to the story, I was at this Kung Fu tournament. I saw this book, The Tao of Meditation, and I had to get it. I bought it, I picked it up, I read the whole thing when I got home, and I was hooked. I just knew that this was it. The practice of meditation was the way to self-mastery. It was the way to what I later learned was enlightenment. And, there's no end to the journey of enlightenment. There's no end to the journey of self-mastery, and meditation is simply a vehicle for practice to become who you really are, what you really are, to reclaim and restore your natural state of mind, which is not chaotic. And why meditate? As I was saying, for me, I was drawn to it when I was younger. And that could be for numerous reasons. For most people, they're just not, let's say, finding the answers they're looking for in, let's say, the religion that they were brought up in, or the culture is not offering any sort of deep meaning or explanation of reality. We're just kind of born into this world, especially here in the West. I'm here in the United States, just about an hour outside of Washington, D.C., in the Northern Virginia area. And, growing up here in America, spirituality is not something that's readily available in the average household, I should say. So it's definitely something that is sought out, it seems, by a lot of people that aren't satisfied with their upbringing, their family's beliefs, their culture, different, traditions in the East, say in India, for example. There's a rich culture of enlightenment, meditation, yoga, liberation. These are understood a lot more there than they are here in the West. In the West, it's a very early exposure to these concepts. But it's getting more. It's getting more so. So, again, for me, I seemed somewhat of an outcast because I was interested in these subjects, again, through initially being attracted to something like martial arts and some sort of mind-body discipline, moving into a more mystical exploration that brought me to Kundalini meditation and, just the idea that this is it. This is the practice. The dual practice of meditation and mindfulness are what will keep you on the path. And in a crazy, chaotic world like this, it's good to have practices that keep you on the path toward self-realization, enlightenment, self-discovery, liberation, whatever you want to call it, realization. And maybe for you, you came to meditation because you were looking for answers. Maybe you're looking for a better understanding. I know for a lot of people, we're looking for something more real, something truer, something that is deeper than just this kind of matrix surface consumer-oriented life that we're all born into. And, meditation is sort of a way out, in a way, or a way in, however you want to describe it. And, so why meditate in a world like this? It's easy to get caught up in the web. It's easy to get caught up in the myriad of distractions that are possible to the modern human being, from our phones to our TVs to our computers to our jobs, lives, families, responsibilities, school, work, whatever it might be. We have so many things that can lead us astray or lead us down a path that goes nowhere, or toward a downward spiral. So I think once you kind of grow up and look around and see that the world kind of offers this consumer-based sensorial satisfaction, gross world that's more suited to satisfy our senses than it is to satisfy our souls. We begin to look, we begin to seek, we go on a journey of self-discovery to find out who we are. Who am I? And when you come across something like meditation, there's a lot out there. There's a lot that you can check out. One of the things that meditation can offer is the idea of deconditioning the mind. When we're born and immediately imprinted with the culture, our families, the belief systems, the language, the education, influence from our peers, environments, the media, schools, all sorts of things can influence us. And these create our personalities, going through life, having these experiences, having these memories, and kind of, we're creating this identity that is just a byproduct of our influence in the environment. And at a certain age, we kind of grow up and see that this identity that we've created is something that can be changed. It can be evolved. It can be transcended. It can be altered. It can be improved. It can be something that we create, and we go on a journey of self-discovery, and we recreate ourselves. What do I like? Who am I going to be in this world? What do I represent? What do I stand for? And all of these things begin to accumulate into our identity, our personality, our beliefs. Well, funny thing happens is after some time, these beliefs, these thoughts, these identities, they tend to, in most cases, crystallize and become rigid. In fact, they become something of a prison for a lot of people, to where you feel that there's something deeper, but you simply can't get out of these tendencies, these personality quirks, or these things that you identify with, the things that you're addicted to. So as we get into looking around at life, and we start to wake up and see, we seek something deeper. And perhaps we find meditation. So in meditation practice, one of the first things that most people are familiar with is to sit when you meditate and observe the mind, or observe the breath. And one of the first things that we notice when we sit down for this very simple, seemingly simple task, is just how much our minds are busy, just how much thoughts we're thinking, and just how much, difficulty it can be sometimes to just have a moment of peace and calm and clarity in the mind. We begin to notice certain tendencies that we have to think certain things, or what have you. So there's definitely a way to go about meditation. One of the things that I like to share with people is concentration exercises. Initially, concentration exercises to develop the strength of your willpower, to develop the mind to the point where you can hold the mind on a certain object of focus continually, in a continuous stream of awareness. And this is known as single-pointed mind training. So when we practice the single-pointed mind training, what you're doing is you're training the mind to hold still. Just like you would train the body to become still when you're doing yoga or practicing martial arts, and you have to hold a posture. Well, when you're practicing your meditation, you want to be able to first hold your physical body still. Then you want to hold your emotional or energetic body still. Meaning, not still to the point where you're with tension trying to hold it, but just allow it to become rested and calm and sit. Just like your physical body is sitting and can be still, you can rest your emotional body and make that still. And then you can also rest the mind and make that still. And then you can bring your focus and your awareness onto a certain object of concentration, whether that be your breath, whether that be a mantra, whether that be what's called a yantra, which is a visual focus device, whether that be music, whether that be focusing on a chakra, or focusing on a visualization in the mind's eye. There's so many different ways you can practice your single-pointed mind concentration technique. And I think it's good to find the ones that you naturally gravitate to for developing your concentration in the beginning. What this will do is it'll give your mind a tremendous amount of willpower to hold still on an object. And it doesn't take long to get good at it, but it does take consistent practice. But the value is there because if you were to say, start your meditation practice just sitting and observing the mind, chances are your mind is just going to be wandering. You're going to get caught up in thought, daydream. You're going to think about what you need to do later, think about how much longer you need to sit there. You're going to be thinking and thinking and thinking. So when you practice your concentration first, you sort of learn how to stop all that mental chatter by focusing on one thing. It's like you're distracting yourself. But when you focus on one thing, only one thing exists. If you do it good enough, if you focus hard enough, only that thing begins to exist in your mind when your complete focus has been applied to that thing, to that object. And that's the idea behind single-pointed mind, is that complete focus on one object will ultimately stop and exclude all other incoming thoughts for as long as you can hold it on that one point. And the exercise is when the mind wanders or starts to think or goes back to thinking about what you're going to do later or how much time is left in this meditation, you simply bring the mind back to focusing on that object, whether it be your chakra, the yantra, the mantra, whether it be music, whether it be that candle flame, whatever you're focusing on. Bring your mind back. Every single time you bring your mind back to that object, you're strengthening your concentration ability, holding it longer for longer periods of time. In the beginning, holding on to that object for concentration, longer periods of time, each and every time, strengthens your concentration ability to the point, no pun intended, where you'll be able to hold it there as long as you want. And when you can hold it there for as long as you want, you have a steady stream of conscious awareness on that one point, there begins to become a merging of the subject and the object. You join with the object of focus. And this ultimately is training for the mind of what is true, the true meaning of yoga. Yoga, in its meditative terms, refers to union, to join the mind with the mind of the divine, with the infinite mind of the universe, to join the mind, to join the separate self, to join the separate energy of the individual with the cosmic energy. And this is something that takes training. Or sometimes it doesn't take any training, and we kind of just skip into it and don't realize we're doing it, and then we pull ourselves out of it because we realized that we were gone for a second. So it's a process of getting into that pool, dipping the toe into the water, little by little, until we can eventually jump right in, dive right in, and go for a swim. So there you have it, folks. I'm going to wrap this up for episode 1 of the Meditation and Mindfulness Podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. See you soon.